And good Thursday evening. What's happening? Hopefully, you're having a wonderful week so far. The weekend just around the corner, Labor Day weekend, which means hopefully for some of you, 3, maybe 4 day weekend, which of course for me means more baseball to watch. And maybe that's what you're doing too. If you're watching this, obviously you're a fan of baseball. That's what we're going to be talking about again tonight. This is the Tom Talks Baseball podcast. I'm Tom Young. You can find us on Facebook, which maybe you're watching us there right now, Tom Talks Baseball Podcast. Be sure to give us a like or a follow there to keep up to date with more interactive podcasts that we have going on in the future. Also find us on Twitter at Tom Talks BBP and YouTube. These videos are also on YouTube. Feel free to head over there, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just type in Tom Talks Baseball Podcast there, and that's another place you can check this out if maybe you're not the biggest fan of Facebook or places like that. A lot going on tonight we're going to be talking about. I am Tom Young. Once again, thanks for joining me. I'm hanging out in the man cave. Again, I've kind of rearranged a little bit to try to get myself a more comfortable setup. That way I'm a little more upright, looking a little better in the camera with you guys. And once again, this is an interactive podcast. I want you to chime in. You like what we're talking about? Don't like what we're talking about. Maybe we're not talking about something that you want to talk about. Whatever it is, leave comments and we'll see those. We'll throw those up on the screen and we will try to answer those the best we can. And since I don't have all the answers, I got to bring in my partner in crime here, David Lovejoy, because he helps me out when I don't know what I'm doing. David, what's up, man? How you doing this evening?
All right, how you doing today, Tom?
Hey, we're doing very well. You're a very busy man. Something else, I wanted to talk about it last week, but we'll talk about it this week because you've had a really cool week with your morning show, and that we do want to talk about that. I think a lot of people need to be checking that out, especially if you live here in Amarillo. This is the place to go for local information, and David and Shannon and Lance and company are killing it right now. And once they get that thing up and running full steam, it's the place to be. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now, David, we're going to be talking some baseball. So hopefully you're down for that. Arturo joining us tonight wants to know what's up. Tom and David, good to see you, Arturo. Los Doyos in our fantasy baseball league, which, by the way, I'm like middle of the road, and I think Arturo is winning again right now. He has fantasy baseball figured out, and so we might talk about that a little bit later on. But of course, the main thing going on, David, this past week was the trade deadline, and you and I were on here last week talking about, did we think a lot of moves are going to be made? And my thought was, because of the shortened season, because of how long you had with these guys and all the teams making playoffs, I didn't think there was going to be a whole lot of activity, especially on the blockbuster front. But man, I was wrong. There was quite a bit of movement there on that final day. What did you think of all those moves happening there before that deadline?
I was in the same boat as you, Tom. I thought, well, it's a 60-game season. Nobody's going to do anything drastic or change in a major way. I thought maybe a few arms, some pitchers, some relievers would go. But Monday came down. Teams started making moves on Sunday. It went all the way into Monday, and it turned into a pretty exciting trade day. There's some winners, as always, and some losers, and there's some that just leave you scratching your head. We jokingly say Texas Rangers are the Major League Baseball's farm club because they get players and ship them across the league once they've thrown in the white flag, and they go on to become all-stars somewhere else. And I know if you're a big Rangers fan, sometimes it's got to be disheartening that they throw in the towel so early and they let go of young players or key players so quickly. I can go back to Moreland, going to Boston, that type of stuff. You just shake your head with the Rangers.
Well, and we're definitely going to talk about the Rangers later on tonight. I know we got a lot of Ranger fans, especially here in Amarillo, Texas, and I do want to hear from you because I have some thoughts on the way they handled the deadline again. But, of course, the team that made the most action, had the most activity, was the San Diego Padres. Kind of surprising. I mean, they have all this talent in the minor leagues. We knew that the last couple of years. and we weren't quite sure when they were going to be ready to use it to get major league talent. Well, apparently, here in this shortened COVID 60 game season, David, that is when they decided to go ahead and unload a chunk of that. And a lot of the players on the move were former sod poodles. I believe of the 9 players in the starting lineup of the championship game last year, 6 of them are gone to other teams. That's how much activity was done. But of course, the name of the game is, nothing against the Texas League, but it's not about winning the Texas League. It's about winning the World Series. And the Padres got a really good, talented Major League team looking for a few extra pieces. Of course, they got the big one, Mike Clevenger. And we saw some players go in total. Buddy Reed left earlier in the year. He went to Oakland before everything even started. But 6 other former sod poodles were traded in that week leading up to the trade deadline. Louis Torrens, Taylor Trammell, Owen Miller, Edward Olivares. I like Olivares going to Kansas City. I think he's going to get a chance to really play there. Hudson Potts, and also Andres Munoz. Check this out, David. I decided to have a little fun with this earlier this week. I took all their stats. This is what was traded. So, of all the players last year, 510 hits that the Sod Poodles had last year were traded off. Collectively, they were 510 for 1,869. That is a 273 batting average. The Padres traded off 66 Sod Poodle home runs and 276 Sod Poodle RBIs. So they traded off a hefty amount of statistics there, but in the end, it's about winning it at the major league level. They got a lot more talented there, and at the same time, I think they still got 7 of their top 10 prospects, and that's just how deep the Padres were. So what do you think? A lot of people have deemed them winners. Are you one of those as well? And if so, where does this put them in terms of competing with the Dodgers in the West?
They were my surprise team this year in the West. And the way they've come out of the box, it's just amazing. And so I thought, well, by now with the trade deadline, they're either going to go in with both feet or they're going to hold up and know, hey, we've got a decent team and we're building there. But they said, hey, we want that ring, asterisk or no asterisk, on the end of the season. And some of those players on the Sod Poodles, Owen Miller, I loved watching Owen Miller play. He was just a go-to kind of guy, played hard, played tough, played all over the field. Taylor Trammell, we got to interview him last year on Tom Talks Baseball. A great young man. He's been in the futures game 2 years in a row. And he's just kind of bounced around. This is what, 3rd trade now? People were upset, especially local people, about, oh, you stripped our team. And I had to explain to him, even Wellman, the manager Wellman said, look, my job is really not to be, I want to be a winner. I want to win the championship. That's not really my job here. My job here is to get these kids to the next level. And so a lot of players gone, a lot of Hudson Potts and those kind of guys who were great keys to the Sod Poodles championship. Olivares is gone. But San Diego says we're buying in now. And hopefully it builds a strong roster and they can compete again next year and give the Dodgers another challenge in a regular season. But, man, I mean, I was shocked. I was really shocked at the number. And you hit it right on the head. The Padres have had the best farm system for the past 2 years. A lot of people thought, well, you've traded away the farm. You've stripped everything down. You still have guys like Mackenzie Gore and those type of players who are blue chippers that are still coming up the system. So they didn't just sell the whole farm for a pot of magic beans. You got to admire their front office. They said, hey, we're going to cut some weight here to get the players we need and still keep this core of young players here. What can you say about Tatis Jr.? I mean, he's just
MVP. That's what you can say about him. He's MVP this year, right now.
Yeah, and by his play, we always said Machado was kind of an A-Rod type player. Plays when he wants to, kind of a lackadaisical attitude, didn't run out runs. I think he's been ignited by the young kid. and you see a livelier bat out of him. You see more aggressive play out of him. I think it's rubbing off. The kid's rubbing off on everybody in that dugout. That's what you need to win is a mentality that we can. And when the front office makes moves like they did this week, they're saying, "Hey, we're all in. We believe in you guys." And man, it's going to be a race down to the wire. I guarantee you.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit too. But the one interesting thing, and you kind of hit on it here, MLB Pipeline, they had their mid-season rankings 1 through 30, and the Padres, despite moving, I think I totaled 14 players in their farm system they shipped off, and 2 players to be named later. They're still number 3 in all of baseball. They were number 2 behind Tampa Bay when the year started. Now they're number 3 behind Tampa Bay and Detroit. So they still have a very good farm system. And I think one thing too, and Chance checking us out tonight. Thanks for coming on, Chance. I know big sod poodle guy, but especially with Clevenger, he's right about this. They got some control of these guys too. Clevenger's not coming in for 30 games and he's gone. He's got 2 more years of team control beyond this year. So Clevenger is going to be the ace as of now of a rotation that's going to include Lamet, that's going to include Paddock, that's going to include Gore probably next year. Padres got a really good-looking team, and then you factor in the offense. Fernando Tatis Jr., we've seen what he's done so far. Like you said, Machado's playing really well right now. Eric Hosmer's had kind of a resurgence of sorts. And Will Myers, who we saw play really well in Tampa Bay, kind of struggled once he left. He seems to be coming through in some clutch moments again. Padres, a very exciting baseball team. I know one of the guys watching today is a big Dodgers fan, and that's Turo. Padres pitching staff, young and great, should compete moving forward, should compete with the Dodgers moving forward. And the Dodgers, a team, 7 years in a row they've won that division.
Yeah.
And it's looking like they might do that again. I think they got a 5-game lead right now. That's just how good they've been because the Padres are on a roll. But the Dodgers still have that great lead. But this is going to be a good rivalry. A lot of people want to talk Dodgers-Giants because of those New York ties. The Giants haven't quite been there for the last couple of years, while the Dodgers have been way up there. Now you finally got a team in the West that looks like it wants to get up there and compete at the Dodgers level, and maybe going forward, that's what the Padres can do. Go for it.
One big trade that I think is going to make a difference is the Moreland trade to the Padres. You get a veteran leader in there, and that was always the worry. Who's going to be in charge of that clubhouse? Who's going to teach these young guys how to play the game? The move to get Moreland from Boston, that's a nice bat in the lineup and a strong leader, a great team guy. So the Padres, man, they kind of addressed a lot of needs and took care of them on Monday. It's amazing. And it's like going Christmas shopping and still having $1,000 in the bank afterwards. You're like, yeah, I can do more. So that's what the Padres did in this situation. They with the Clevenger trade, he's not a rental. A lot of times these trades at this time of the year, it's a postseason push type thing. This guy's got, like you said, 2 more years. So impressive what the Padres have done.
And Arturo saying Dodgers young with great talent too, outstanding farm system. And in fact, while the Padres were adding all these pieces, the Dodgers traded away Stripling to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, a team that kind of revamped their starting rotation a little bit, trying to do some sort of a run here in this shortened 2020 season with all that young talent they have. They're kind of, I don't want to say the equivalent of the Padres in the American League because they're not playing at that level. But in terms of the excitement of a ball club, they got a very exciting group there. I should say in Buffalo now. They're the Buffalo Blue Jays playing there at Salem Field. But they're a pretty exciting ball club, and they've made some moves as well. And that's something I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit. Some moves I found interesting because here in 2020, you have this shortened season, which means you have less time to be eliminated. And you have a expanded playoff, which means a greater chance of you getting in. So I thought some moves that were made were interesting, including the Marlins. They actually were part of a 3-team trade where they added. Who would have thought in 2020 the Marlins would be adding? Now it was kind of an add and a subtract. They lost Jonathan VR. But they acquired Starlin Marte from the Diamondbacks. And if the season ended today, the Miami Marlins are in the playoffs. I believe at the 7 spot. They'd be playing the Cubs right now.
Wow.
And that's just how weird 2020 is. There is no way that the Marlins in a 162 game season are probably making the playoffs. But here in 2020, short season, expanded playoffs. You go on a bit of a run. They had what was it, a 7-1 start or something?
Yeah.
And they've kind of cooled off a bit. But this talented group also playing really well right now. The Blue Jays kind of talked about this a bit, adding Ross Stripling and Robbie Ray, and also Taijuan Walker. They pretty much, they have Ryu there. They got in the offseason to be the ace of that rotation. They got Tanner Roark, I believe, as well. But then they added 3 more starting pitchers. So the Blue Jays pretty much said, brand new starting rotation. We're going to have Ryu, and then we're going to have 3 new guys, and then we're going to go try to compete in that AL West. And then a team like the Rays and the A's, 2 teams that don't have a lot of money, and they have to get it done with farm systems. They got to get it done by creating talent, making those economical moves. I thought the A's getting second baseman Tommy La Stella was a great move.
Yeah.
And we talked about Owen Miller. I think Tommy La Stella is Owen Miller with a little more power. Kind of a guy where maybe on most teams he doesn't start, but the guy can stick it. And if you can just find a place to put him, you can maybe put him eventually in like a 2 spot of your lineup or a 7 or 8 spot, and they can hit 280 maybe. And then I think Owen Miller can eventually get some of that power. He's not a big power guy right now, but he can grow into that like La Stella did. He finally got a chance to play. He was there with Atlanta. He saw promise there. He went to the Cubs. He was a good part of that team, but just wasn't an everyday guy. And when he went to the Angels last year, it was actually an all-star.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he got hurt, but he was looking like he could have a 30-home run season. He just developed this power, and now the A's got him. Pretty cheap deal. Get a second baseman, a guy that can stick it. And so those were 3 moves that I thought were really interesting.
One of the moves that you touched on, I think is going to be big, is the Blue Jays and Robbie Ray. Bichette is a little banged up right now. So now you've added a middle infielder that can take a break for some of these young kids on that team. And so I think that was a great move by Toronto, setting themselves up for a run. And like you said, the Marlins are doing this despite missing, being shut down for a couple of series with the COVID. And we thought, oh, yeah, this is going to go over like a lead balloon. But they bounced back. And like you said, for a while, they were the best team in baseball. And they're still hanging around. Who'd have thought they'd be making action to get players and not shed players at this time in the season?
Yeah, I thought a lot of teams would just stay put because everyone has a chance pretty much unless you're Pittsburgh, you pretty much have a chance to make it. But a lot of moves were made, and it was a very exciting Monday leading up to that trade deadline, and that might change the way this season goes. The final 25, 30 some odd games here might change how things go. Now, one team that did little and like the Pirates is not going anywhere this year is the Texas Rangers. And of course, on News Talk Sports 710 AM and 97.5 FM, that is a team that we carry. We love carrying Texas Ranger baseball for you guys, Eric Nadell and company calling the game. But unfortunately, it's been kind of a tough game to listen to last couple of years because the Rangers kind of, they're struggling. And you were thinking this year, they went and got Corey Kluber. They got Lance Lynn. It looks like they were going to get some good pitching to go along with an offense that looked like it was a great offense. Kluber throws 1 inning, and he's done for the season. Lance Lynn's been great. Mike Minor, as I figured, was not good like he was last year. And they did trade him off. However, it was for 2 players to be named later. And I talked about this on the podcast last year, David. They should have traded him then. Because Mike Minor pitched the best baseball of his life in 2019, and he wasn't going to be one of those guys that was going to be able to repeat that. And his value was so high last year, that's what they could have got something in return. I'm not saying they would have got a team's number 1 prospect, but you would have got probably a top 10 prospect and maybe a little bit more. And this year, you got 2 players to be named later from the Oakland A's, a team in your division you sent him off to for virtually what could be nothing. Now, of course,
Yeah.
those can turn out to be something good. I think Ryan Sandberg was a player to be named later. That worked okay. But more times than not, those really don't pan out well. Lance Lynn was outside of Clevenger, David, a popular name, guy to be traded. They didn't move him. Joey Gallo's name popped up in a few places. They didn't move him. So outside of Minor, not much done in Texas. What do you think about that?
Well, with Mike Minor, and you're 100% correct, they should have traded him last year. He had more value. This year, he's also even a little bit more velocity off that fastball. But if he gets out to the bay and kind of rekindles that, resets his head, that could be the thing that pushes the A's to the top in the West. And like you said, they do it on a shoestring budget with thumbtacks and bobby pins anyway in Oakland. And to pick up a pitcher that has had success. We'll see what's going on going forward, but it bodes well for Oakland because I didn't give up too much, and I've got a guy who could potentially come back up, add a few more notches of velocity on that fastball, and down the stretch run. That's what you need.
Well, let's check a few comments out here. Some stuff we've talked about. Arturo, going back to the Blue Jays, trying to fix pitchers. Ray and Stripling are struggling. Indeed, they are. But you know how it can be sometimes. A change of scenery might be all you need. You got guys that have the talent. You've seen them do it before. You know it's just not working where it's at. Maybe if they go somewhere else, it can work there for them. Deck Cards checking us out, says he knows nothing about baseball, but let's talk. Let's talk, Deck Cards. Thanks for checking us out tonight. The more the merrier. We love people hanging out with us here. And Arturo, once again, with the Miami Marlins, they win and sell off the players. That's their history pretty much, you know. And that's why I've said multiple times on this podcast, baseball needs to get out of Florida. Florida does not care about regular season baseball. They don't go support their teams. The money doesn't come in.
Right.
They get this great talent. They win titles. No division titles, 2 World Series championships. That's how they've done it. But both times they've had to get rid of guys because they want more money. No one goes to the games until October. But, you know, when you're drawing 14,000 instead of 30,000 when your team's good, it's tough to get the money needed to keep those guys. And this year, definitely it's going to be tough to keep, you know, certain guys that want raises because no fans are going to the game. My thought on the Rangers, I think they failed again. Now,
real quick, Tom, we forgot about Robinson Torino from the catcher from the Rangers.
Yes.
They traded him.
Yeah, where did he go? I'm blanking on that. But yeah, you're right. He went somewhere. They brought him back after a year in Houston,
Mets.
and they had him. He went to the Mets. Poor guy.
You're wrong, Tom. You're wrong.
Yeah. But the Rangers, Lance Lynn is 33 years old. And yes, Lance Lynn, I think, has a better opportunity to stay good as compared to Mike Minor. But Lance Lynn is not going to be a part of your future. By the time you get to this future, Lance Lynn's going to be too old and not going to be worth anything. They should have tried to get something. Yes, and I know at some point you got to keep these guys. But the thing is, you got to get some guys that you want to keep. And they got a couple, but they don't have enough right now. I think Lance Lynn should have been traded. A lot of teams would have paid up for him. You saw what the Indians got out of Clevenger.
Yeah.
They got a pretty good package there. I think Lance Lynn, I could be wrong, someone can correct me here. I think he only had a 1-year deal, though. That could have played a little part in it. I don't think he was there long term. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But whilst Clevenger has 2 more years of control, so you're going to give up more to get that control of a good pitcher. But you still could have got something for the guy. Because the way the Rangers are playing, and they want to revolve this team around Joey Gallo, and Joey Gallo is very good at one thing, but he's very average or poor at everything else. And that's not the kind of guy you want to revolve a team around. You want to revolve it around a Fernando Tatis Jr., a guy that can do a little bit of everything. You know, Gallo hits 40 homers, but when he's not hitting home runs, he's striking out, and he's hitting 190. I don't think they could have got a whole lot for Joey Gallo outside of just those power numbers, which are really nice to look at. But this year, he's really struggled, and I don't think they could have done anything with him, but Lance Lynn was the prized piece that they had. And I think they should have done something, try to get young again. You got the A's, you got the Astros, two teams that are in a position to kind of be good in that division for a while. You got the Mariners, who now have a pretty good farm system. They've kind of stocked up on some
Yeah,
pieces,
right.
trading Austin Nola to the Padres. A good example of that. A lot of those sod poodles going over to Seattle in that deal. So the Mariners were stocking up on young pieces. And so they're going to be trying to be good in the next couple of years. That's where the Rangers need to be. You need to look ahead a little bit. It ain't going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. I know you want to open up that new stadium with a solid centerpiece guy, but you got to think about long term here. And it's not happening anytime soon with what you got. You got to try to get what you can get while you can, or Mike Minor will happen to you just like he did here in 2020. Anything else you want to add to that, David, before we move on?
You're right. The Rangers built that beautiful new palace. They opened it this year, of course, because of COVID. It was kind of rocky. But who are you going to put on your opening day program guide next year? Sin-Soo Choo and Joey Gallo? Are you really going to take time out to go to the ball game to see those two players? It's just confusing. And if you're a Rangers fan, like I said, the joke is, the Rangers played great baseball till the All-Star break, and then they just give up. This time in a 60-game season, about 2 weeks in, they kind of said, well, we're going to retool. We're going to throw it in. But they don't draw back the young talent. They don't draw it back in to help put into their system. And that's what's so confusing. I think probably the last time the Rangers had decent front office work was when Nolan Ryan was there.
And I will say, first of all, I'm a fan of Chu. I've always liked Sin-Soo Choo. I love his approach at the plate. The only problem is he's like, 38? So obviously he's not a part of the future. They are making a move that I will say I'm a fan of. Leody Tavares, the young guy, one of their better prospects. I think I saw they're going to put him in the leadoff spot the rest of the season. And so Chu's been their leadoff guy. They're going to take Chu out of there, put Tavares in there. Good. That's what you need to do. See if this kid can do it. The kid's he's got some speed. He had some good numbers in the minors, some good on-base numbers. Let's see if that translates to the major leagues. You got a 30-game audition here. Rangers are like, 12 and 24. They're not going anywhere. Let's see what the kid can do. He's going to go against some tough competition there when you got both the NL and the AL West you're playing. So if he can get it done this year, obviously he's got some talent to get it done going forward. So that is a move I am a fan of. Let the young kids out there see what they can do. Figure out if you got anything worth going after in the year 2021. A couple more things we're going to talk about here. Going to keep it a little short tonight because there's a baseball on the television that I'm sure you'd like to check out. This is the Tom Talks Baseball podcast. I want to thank you once again for hanging with us on this Thursday evening. You can find us on Facebook, Tom Talks Baseball Podcast. I'm sure you checked this out there a little bit. Also, you can watch this on YouTube. We have a YouTube page. I made it a while back, tried a couple things, didn't like it, but this is a perfect thing for YouTube. And you can go there and comment there as well. Watch the exact same thing you're seeing on Facebook. So just go to Tom Talks Baseball Podcast on YouTube. And also on the kxgl-fm, the Eagle YouTube page as well. We're going to end this thing tonight with our favorite jerseys of 2020, David. Something that you and I have talked about, a lot of really sharp looking jerseys. So stick around for that. But one thing we want to do real quick, one thing we started a couple weeks ago, because this is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro Leagues, a very important part in baseball history here in the United States. David's been educating us about the Negro Leagues each and every week by highlighting a specific player, and we're going to do that again here, David. Who are we talking about this evening?
We're going to talk about Joshua Gibson. He's known as the Black Babe Ruth of the Negro Leagues. A great catcher, a great hitter, probably one of the very best power hitters in the game. He grew up in Georgia. His family moved to Pittsburgh. he started working in technical school. He was trained to be an electrician. He got a job as an elevator operator at a Kimball's department store, and they had a team at the department store. He started playing with those guys, started showing promise, and got picked up by the Homestead Grays, one of the premier teams of the Negro Leagues later on. But when they picked him up as a young man, they were still a semi-pro team. He then went on to go to the best, probably one of the best Negro League teams of their time, the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Some fans say that Gibson outslugged Ruth by a mile. In some estimates, because records are really shaky from the Negro League, and then you also had a lot of barnstorming games where the teams would just go on a road trip and play local factories that had teams, local communities or churches that had teams. They weren't really the talent. Sometimes it wasn't up to major league level on those barnstorming trips. But some say if you go back and you look through the records, you look at box scores, Josh Gibson supposedly hit around 1,000 home runs. Amazing. Josh was just a quintessential power hitter. He stood 6'1", 210 pounds, and that's in the 30s. You know, that's a huge guy. He married young. He married his young sweetheart, and she died in childbirth to twin kids. He had a boy and a girl, and she passed away. And then things just started to fall apart for Josh. He had some manic episodes, and you know, back in that day, they really did. You know, they just said he's kind of loopy, and he would go into manic depression, and he had issues. And so in 1943, Gibson fell into a coma, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And after regaining consciousness, he refused the option of the surgical removal of that tumor, and he only lived another 4 years with just tremendous headaches and physical nausea and the whole 9 yards. In 1944, Gibson was hospitalized in D.C., and on January 20th of 1947, he died of a stroke at just the age of 35. And he was buried in Allegheny Cemetery in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and he lay there for several years until about 1975, when a plaque was placed there on his grave to recognize the Black Babe Ruth. And you could take it with a grain of salt that he hit 1,000 home runs because of some of the talent. But if you can hit 800 home runs with any talent, you're a heck of a ball player. A guy that most people have never heard of. It's heartbreaking. You wonder that if his wife didn't die in childbirth, would he have kept it together? Would he have gone to take that ride like Jackie Robinson or Larry Doby? You know, because those were the first two players taken into baseball, one in the National League with Jackie, Doby in the American League. Some said Gibson would have been that guy. He would have been that guy to go in. In 1972, Gibson and Bucklander became the second and third players behind Satchel Paige inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And what a guy, what a player, and what a history of the Negro Leagues.
You know, it would have been a lot of fun. I mean, of course, we weren't alive back then, but if the leagues were integrated and you could see some of these guys go against the ones that we know from Major League Baseball and just see how they stack up, because you know for a fact some of them would have been just as good, if not better, than some of the guys that we know in history. Nothing against Babe Ruth or guys like that, but Josh Gibson, from the sound of it, would have been right up there competing in an era when people weren't hitting home runs. You know, you hit 10 and you were great, back then. And then Josh Gibson's just mashing left and right. He just looks like, just looking at this picture, the dude looks like an ox. He looks like someone who could just, he shakes your hand and he breaks it. You know, one of those kind of guys. But having a lot of fun here learning about the history of the Negro Leagues. Once again, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the league. And each week here, as we do this interactive podcast for the remainder of the 2020 season, David's going to enlighten us by sharing some of his knowledge of the Negro Leagues and telling us a bit more about the great leagues that happened back in the day. Speaking of great, David, one more thing before we get out of here. You and I have been talking about this a little bit. Some of the jerseys this year in Major League Baseball are on fire. Baseball, while they did a lot of things wrong, we've talked about that. Rob Manfred's, the Astros handling of that, all sorts of stuff. The way they try to get the season back. One thing that looks good is if you're watching the game on television, teams look sharp. The uniform game is on point in 2020. And you and I have some favorite uniforms. And if you're watching right now, I want you to tell us who your favorite team is and their favorite uniform. Maybe it isn't even your favorite team. Maybe it's a team you hate, but you just love the way that uniform looks.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a little fun with this, David. We are going to, each of us are going to do a top 5 uniforms for 20. So these are 2020 uniforms that we are doing. And I'm going to let you go first. And I'm going to set this up here. And then once again, if you're watching, I want to know about your favorite uniforms. And then I want you to tell me why you like what you like. And I'm going to go ahead and get this first one up here, David, because this is your first. We're going 5-1 here.
Yes, sir.
So
yes, sir.
Number 5 for David is this bad boy right here. Tell us why you like this jersey.
The kids call this now their drip. You got your drip on point when you're looking sharp. And this year, MLB, their drip is on point this year. I hate red. I hate the color red. I've never been a red fan. All the years I played sports, I think I got to wear blue one time, and that was my favorite color was blue. And so I'm just not a big fan of the reds. I like, we lost Tom Seaver yesterday from the Big Red Machine, one of the first series I can remember watching in the 70s as a young kid. And not a big fan of the color red, but when I saw these Cincinnati Red uniforms, they just popped. The simplicity of it with just the red and script, not too busy. I think that's just a great look. I love that uniform. And when I saw it on TV, not being a fan of the color red, not being a Cincinnati Red fan, I thought, boy, that's an awesome uniform. That's my number 5. Number 4, I've always had a soft spot for the Oakland A's. Coming up as a kid, I can remember watching them in the series with Raleigh Fingers and Vita Blue uniforms. And it seemed like the A's had 50 uniforms. They'd have that bright yellow with these, or they white uniforms with a white hat and a green bill. They just had great colors. The only thing that kind of disturbed me about the A's in the 90s sometimes is that green was almost neon, almost like Wham, George Michael green. This uniform here, it's a deeper green, and it's just a beautiful uniform. And not a big fan of green, but that is a great uniform. Simple, clean, the gold trims on it. It's beautiful, like the A's. My number 3, I grew up not a Texas Ranger fan, even though I live in Amarillo, was born and raised in Amarillo. We were an Astros. My mom liked the Astros. And we used to listen to a lot of baseball on the radio. But back then, if you didn't see the MLB Game of the Week on NBC or Monday Night Baseball, Keith Jackson called Monday Night Baseball on ABC during the summer, you got to see a Rangers game on Sunday usually. Toby Harrah and those guys back then, Gamble, Oscar, with the big afro. And this was the uniform they wore. The powder blues. Now, being a kid of the 70s and 80s, this was their road uniform. The Cubs, the Phillies, everybody, St. Louis. And now it's trending back in. We've seen in recent years the Cardinals with one, Philly with one. The Rangers with their new uniform came out with one. Their Sunday afternoon uniforms. They pair that with the same color hat. Great looking uniform. About the only good thing happening in Texas in the Rangerville right now. Number 2, one of my favorite teams that I grew up with, I think about Cito Gaston and that team and going to the World Series. One thing I always loved about the Blue Jays, you remember back in the days where they had basically the 3-line design in their numbers. Where it was three to make it like it was like
Yes.
futuristic. If you remember Rollerball, that movie, that was sort of the thing. The original Rollerball, the numbers were that kind of sci-fi thing, and they put those on those jerseys. George Bell and those guys wore. Blue Jays do it right with that light blue, that powder blue. It's great to see that uniform. Love that Blue Jays uniform. And I know Tom. Tom's a big fan of that Blue Jay logo. And it is a great logo, man. It pops on a ball cap.
Yeah, real quick
My
before we
number,
unveil your number, real quick, Chance agrees with you on that Oakland A's uniform. It is a sharp looking one this year. He also says the White Sox blacktop. I'm with them on that. And
yeah,
when we get to mine, and I think you can see David and I are going to have some similarities. Bold colors this year. It seems to be in. It's not just white. It's not just gray. It's these bold, taking these
yeah,
alternate colors and making them pop, and
yeah.
they look really sharp. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm sure when
I,
it's
I'm gonna
100
have to go
degrees, the White Sox
with
don't
that.
like those blacks. But
With, with that chance, because I'm older, I remember when they would play in what I would call those pajama tops. They had the
oh
one
yeah,
with the
yeah,
White Sox, the blue red, and I remember when their uniforms were the dark blue. And I also remember and watched on TV when the White Sox would wear shorts. They'd wear
yeah.
the
They
short
did
pants.
they did that for 1 year, right?
Yeah, they did one year.
Was it 81? Maybe was
Yeah,
it the early 80s? Yeah,
yeah,
that was weird. All right,
great. I remember
David.
Claudel Washington wearing that. I just thought, wow, that's a heck of a uniform.
Number one, David, your favorite uniform in 2020 is.
The San Diego Padres. Now, the thing about this is, I'm not a fan of the color brown. Just like red doesn't really do much for me, or green. I'm a blue, gray, black guy. But this uniform and the way they redesigned it, and especially this road pinstripe that's a heather gray with a little dusting of brown in it, the gold letters. Number one, I'm glad they went back to this look and the swinging Padre on their sleeve, because for a while there, the Padres had an identity crisis. Every time you turned around, they had a new uniform that was nowhere close to their original brown and gold. And so they went back to that, and boy, did they do it well. This uniform right here, this brown pinstripe with the gray overtones, is probably one of the best looking uniforms in baseball today. It's just a joy. They're a great team, and they look great while they do it.
I love how they got the Friar swinging on the sleeve. Going back to that Oakland A's one, they got the elephant there on the sleeve. So it's kind of like you're bolder, but you're not forgetting who you are, and
Tradition.
you're kind of paying back. Chance says he remembers those the Black Sox or
That
the
was
White Sox,
hilarious.
I should say, wearing those shorts. Man, that was a weird experiment. I don't know
Could you,
what they were
could you
thinking.
imagine sliding into second base in shorts? I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yes, and I've
You,
done that in slow pitch softball, and I can tell you, no, that's not fun. It's
you
terrible.
better give me some pants. But I like the fact that San Diego had to get away from this. California, the Angels did this a lot too. When they would go to this new design uniform, where did this blue and gold come from? And it was just all over the place with the Padres the last 5 or 10 years. Same thing with the A's when they tried to go with that when Mo Vaughn played for them, and it was this weird blue uniform. Where'd you get that from? Stick to what brought you here. We all love that traditional Yankee uniform, home uniform. We all love that Chicago Cub pinstripe. That's classic, and they'll never do away with that. And you shouldn't do away. San Diego should have never did away with the brown and the gold.
Well, there's David's top five. What do you think of his list? If you enjoy that, leave a comment below. And like Chance here, dropping some uniforms that he enjoys as well, like the White Sox black uniforms. Time for my top five, David, and I'm going to start with the Colorado Rockies. I love this purple uniform. The alternate purples they wear, I just think it looks sharp. And once again, bold colors. I just love bold colors. I even liked when, like back in the day, like I think they still have it a little bit, but like you got kind of like that silver glitter going
Yeah,
on with the lettering. Like I enjoy that, but something about the purple, like it just sticks out. It looks really good. Yes, you can be a man and wear purple. and be darn good looking while doing it. And so the Rockies and Lance, if you're watching, there you go. I know you're going to
Yeah.
enjoy that one as well.
Hey, real
And
quick, Tom. Chance just added the Orioles look great. We went to dinner last week, and the Orioles were playing, and that is a great looking
yes, it
uniform.
is. Yeah, they were
It
playing the
is.
Blue Jays. It was like a great
Yeah,
uniform game.
it was.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you, Chance. I think that one's number 6. I was looking at it. Like I was looking at these. I had that one popped up. I
Yeah.
stared at it for a while, and that orange top. I'm with you. The orange top, just a really sharp looking uniform. And I was thinking about that one, but I left them just outside. My number 4, one that you saw with David. Cincinnati Reds and that alternate red jersey. Once again, that vibrant color. I love the way Reds is spelled on this. That
That's
cursive
pretty
just
beautiful.
kind of goes back to old school a little bit. It's not just these block letters. You got this cursive, has a little bit of life to it, and you got the good old Cincinnati Red baseball dude on the sleeve. Kind of like we talked about with the A's and with the Padres, going back to some of those older logos, kind of bringing them back to life a little bit. The Reds look really, really good. They may not be playing the way they thought they would here in 2020, but at the very least, they're a sharp-looking baseball team on the field. Halfway through my list, number 3. Not the Rays one that I think I was telling you about earlier, David. This is their road jersey.
Yeah.
The Rays got a really good looking powder blue as well that I do enjoy. I do enjoy that powder blue, but just watching this the other night when Aroldis Chapman was throwing fastballs at their heads, I was like, man, that's a good looking team. I love the way that, I love how big the word Rays is on there. I love that kind of midnight blue color they got going on, and I think they should wear this jersey all the time. Even if they're at home, I don't care where they're at. I am a big fan of the Tampa Bay road jersey. Number
Now,
2. Oh,
and
go
you're a
ahead.
big fan. You're a huge fan of that Tampa Bay Ray hat with the big Ray on it.
That the original Ray when they
Mm-hmm.
first came out, like the full Devil Ray.
Yeah.
I remember buying a hat before they even played a game because I love
Wow.
that logo. I lost the hat. That was a long time ago. But I was a huge fan of that logo, and I was a huge fan of, like, even as maybe some would say it was gaudy when they had the Devil Ray and like that weird kind of like prism looking color
Yeah.
on their jersey. I
Yeah.
love that too. I was a fan. It was different. It was strange to me, but I thought it worked pretty well. Number 2 on my list, David, one that you had, and I agree with you on this one. You know, the fact that the A's went darker on that green, it just looks sharp. I love how big the A's is right there on the chest. You got the old school elephant there on the sleeve. It's just a really, really good looking baseball jersey. And once again, like kind of we talked about here, you can see the history of this team in this jersey. You got a little bit of the new, like it's a little bit sharper with the edges, but you still have that old feel with it. So I'm definitely a fan of this Oakland A's jersey. And my number 1, no surprise to David, the question is, which one did I go with? I went with the powder blue on the Blue Jays jersey. The Blue Jays for me, have always had my favorite logo in sports. It literally up there, no joke, I kid you not, up there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cream orange. I love it. A lot of people hate that. I
I
love
love
it.
it.
And I love the Blue Jays logo. I even loved it when they had that weird little identity crisis in the early 2000s, and they had like that dark blue, black, silver thing going on.
Yeah.
And then when they had Roger Clemens, they kind of had the maple leaf become bigger and the Blue Jay head in the leaf. I love that too. The Blue Jays have never done anything wrong in terms of their logo, in my opinion. And the fact that they kind of went old school again and put it on a powder blue, which says more old school, but then you got the lettering looking new school. It's a great combination for me, and they look really sharp playing in that Salem field right now when they wear these, or even when they wear their dark blue ones. It's just a sharp jersey. Huge fan of the Blue Jay jersey. Always have been. In fact, last week on the podcast, I was wearing a Blue Jay shirt. So, I mean, I've always loved the team's look. And that, for me, David, is my number one jersey here in 2020. What do you think of my list? We have some similarities here.
I love your list. I love your list. That Tampa Bay jersey, the Rays, and that was the time when the Rays came into the league, and the Colorado jersey. You had Arizona and those teams. They would do the '80s kind of pastel blues and that sort of stuff. I didn't care for those. I remember when Johnson pitched for Arizona. I didn't care for that uniform and that script. But the only thing I do not like about any of these uniforms right now, the thing that detracts from every uniform, is that stupid swoosh on the. I hate. Do we need that?
Yeah, Nike needs that because that's what they're. I mean, they do it. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you're essentially a walking advertisement.
I think, okay, fine. That's who made the jerseys. Maybe a little small Nike swoosh on the sleeve or something. But this big, I'm just not a fan. You might as well do like they do in Australian rules football or in soccer. Joe's Taco Shack. NBA does it now. They love truck stop on their uniform. Not a big fan of that. It takes away from the aesthetic look of it, and I'm just not a big fan of that look.
The Yankees blackout uniform. Yeah, I like that too.
I've never seen them play in the blackout uniform. I can't remember a game.
They don't do it very often. Not very often. Like maybe you're thinking like the Players Weekend, like when they do the nicknames. Like was it last year when the home teams wore like pretty much everything was all white and everything was all black for the road team.
That was horrible.
And those, yeah, for the most part, I wasn't a fan. Even though, like, the more I looked at them, like I was like, I don't know why. I'm kind of sort of digging it. Why? Why am I liking this? There's no color there. Why am I liking this? But the Yankees are white and black anyway, so yeah. I mean, it makes sense for them. But like, yeah, when the Cubs or a team that is full of color, the Rockies do something like that, it was a little weird looking.
And you walk out in monochrome white all the way. Everything's white. The pitchers had to wear a different color hat in that road uniform because the batters couldn't see the ball coming out. So the pitchers always had to wear their regular team hat during that monochrome. You're right. It just washed out. I do like how they're all going back to the elephant in the A's, the Mr. Baseball with the mustache for the Reds. It's like the tradition of the red stockings on the Red Sox uniform. I'm a traditional guy. That's why I like the Cubs uniform. I like the Dodgers. I like the Yankees. They're traditional. But these uniforms just catch your eye.
Another uniform I like too is Saw Poodle's Baby Blues. Fan of those.
Yeah.
Hopefully next year we can actually see those again. And hopefully too, based on what we saw at the Texas Collegiate League, we'll have a red option because those red Sod Squad uniforms were great looking. And I think chatting with Tony Inzer a little bit, he was like, yeah, maybe we'll have to do something and have red be more of a primary color in one of these alternate jerseys. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But I think, David, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. It's been a lot of fun, been on for about an hour, chatting baseball with you guys tonight. Thanks for all the great comments. David and I certainly appreciate it. Real quick, speaking of David, the internet seems to be crapping out a bit too because that's what happens on this, unfortunately. I do want to say, if you haven't done this yet, tune in to News Talk Sports 710 AM and 97.5 FM. Of course, Newsday Amarillo is on from 6 to 7 because now from 7 until 9, you and Shannon and Lance and Chuck have the chat where you are simulcasting on KFDA channel 10-2 where it is a very heavy local focus. You guys get a lot of great guests on in a Zoom call so you can actually see the people that you are talking to. You're asking people to literally become a part of the show, just like this. They leave comments. You're going to see them. You're going to read them. You're going to respond to them. The guest is going to respond to them. Tell us just real quickly a bit about the chat and what we can expect going forward with that.
The chat is an interactive thing. We've got Lance Launard hanging out at KFDA. We're in the studio at KGNC. This week we had some great guests. We had Mayor Nelson, Ginger Nelson. This morning we had the first black man elected to a statewide position. Grew up right here in Amarillo, went to Carver, went to graduated from Amarillo High. Judge Morris Overstreet was on. We talked about the election and that sort of thing. And instead of us reading the news to you or us telling you what the news is, we bring on people. You have questions, we get you answers. And I think that's really what news should be, is information. Tune in tomorrow. Now it's on cable, channel 6 if you had Suddenlink. On antenna, it's 10-2. Tomorrow, we're going to have a congressional candidate, Ronnie Jackson. We're also going to have Jeff Blackburn talking about the Potter County Public Defender's Office, the grant they wanted to get. The queen of Center City, Miss
Beth Duke. Yes, we love Beth Duke around here.
exclusive interview with the Dumas High School head football coach. Check it out on Facebook, the chat, and you can send us any question you want or to kgncnewsnow.com.
David, appreciate it, man. Definitely check out the chat because it's so early in the morning. You probably need to go to bed. So we're going to go ahead and end this thing right here. Thanks again for all the comments tonight. Hopefully you enjoy this. We plan on doing some more of these. We want you to be a part of these shows. That's the whole point of these interactive podcasts. And hopefully tonight there is some baseball on. Cubs already lost. That stinks, but that opened up my evening to watch a bunch of other baseball. So I'm going to be checking that out later on tonight. This has been the Tom Talks Baseball Podcast. I'm Tom Young. He's David Lovejoy. Thank you very much for watching tonight. Everyone have a good week. We'll talk to you again next time with another interactive Tom Talks Baseball podcast.